Good day, everyone. So, welcome back to our pre recorded session about our course, Management Science in Accounting 205. But before we go to our lecture proper, I would like to give you this um, Bible verse or scripture from the Bible uh, from Luke 16, verse 10. So, Luke 16, verse 10 says that whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. So, what's the connection of this scripture to our topic today? So, I want you all to think beyond accounting. Okay? So, because one day many of you will become managers, and you will be entrusted with money, with people, with resources, decisions, and eventually the performance of the entire organization. And with that, leadership doesn't begin when you receive a managerial title, but it will begin with how faithfully you handle the small responsibilities entrusted to you today. And that's why I'm sharing you this Bible verse, because we will be discussing responsibility accounting, and I want you to remember that behind every number, or behind every lecture, um, or behind every performance reports, there is a person. There is a person who is entrusted with a responsibility. So, without further ado, let's go on to our lecture proper. And I want you to revisit. We will be revisiting um, management as a science, no? But let's have it as one word, management science. So this refers to a discipline that applies mathematical and analytical techniques to solve complex organizational problems. So again, I want you to envision yourselves that you are already in the corporate world. You are no longer students, but you are already working professionals, no? So everything that we tackle here will lead us to decision making and solving problems. So another definition of management science is that it combines elements of mathematics, statistics, economics, computer science, and engineering to provide quantitative approaches to decision making. So here in our course, we don't just deal with accounting. No, so we also look into other discipline, no, other functions within the organization. Then it focuses on the function of management in planning, controlling, and decision making. Now, for the application to business, um, this is the first example, optimization. So it's identifying the best way to allocate resources to achieve objectives. So there are a lot of resources in the company, but again, these resources, they are not unlimited. So therefore, we have to optimize. We have to allocate the resources wisely, no, effectively and efficiently. Now, for the forecasting, there it is the predicting of future trends and outcomes using what? There is a historical data, no, for us to um project, for us to forecast, no? And then scheduling. So for the scheduling, creating efficient schedules for production, transportation, or personnel. So management science is applicable here, right? For inventory management, determining optimal levels of inventory to balance supply and demand. And another is risk analysis. So management science here is um, or plays a vital role as well in the risk analysis, no? So in risk analysis, we assess potential risks and their impact on business operations. And for the project management, there is planning, scheduling, and controlling projects to meet deadlines and budgets. For the financial analysis, we evaluate financial performance and making investment decisions. And for the marketing analysis, we analyze market data to understand customer behavior and optimize marketing strategies. So, management science there, no? Management science um, is applicable here to the examples that I have given you, no? Because again, this talks about, or this is an application of mathematical and analytical techniques, no? So in each of the examples that I have given you, there is um there is a decision to make, right? And um with without having sufficient data or information, we cannot be able to solve a particular problem, or we cannot be able to achieve a particular goal. That's why management as a science is very important. But also, we would look into the art, the wisdom in it, how to better communicate these reports, these end results, right? So we will be, um, there is always a balance of science and art, no? But I want to emphasize here that before we can be able to solve the problem, there must be science to it. There must be knowledge. There must be data, information, evidences, right? So let's go to our lecture proper about the responsibility accounting and segment evaluation. And the reference material is the Management Services 2021 edition by Franklin T. Agamata, CPA, MBA. Now, for the learning outcomes, at the end of the discussion, students, no? But I would like to call you as working professionals already. So let's channel the working professional aura within us. Okay? So I will be your facilitator for today. So let's envision ourselves that we have this onboarding or orientation or training. So I will be explaining to you the organizational structure, why it matters in managerial reporting, differentiation of centralization, decentralization, and empowerment, distinguishing authority, responsibility, and accountability. And we have here identifying and explaining the four responsibility centers, applying the concept of controllability and performance evaluation, preparation and interpretation of responsibility accounting reports, evaluation of profit centers using controllable and segment margin. And now for the last investment center, but I will not be including this in our discussion today because that will be in the next part, which is the divisional performance measure. So that will be on the part 3, on the topic 3 of prelims. Okay? So because para dili maputol ang divisional performance measures. No? So this will be the introduction to the divisional performance measures. Now for the centralization, decentralization, and empowerment. So for the centralization, the decision power remains mainly with top management. So they're the sole decision makers in centralization structure. Then the advantages here are consistency and strong control, but the disadvantages here are slower decisions and less flexibility because we are reliant on the top management, no? So we cannot do a do the move, the action, not unless they approve it. Then the centralization authority is delegated to managers in different organizational units. So the positive here or the advantages here are faster decision making, local knowledge, and managerial development. Now for the empowerment, decision making is pushed closer to operating employees. So the advantages here are speed, ownership, engagement, and responsiveness. So I would like to highlight here that decision making generally moves downward as authority is delegated. So let's have an example. So imagine there is a company, no, where every decision must be approved by the CEO. So for example, I'm the CEO. Then can you imagine how slow the organization would become? No, if, for example, a branch manager. So say branch manager, there is a purchase order of 5,000. But again, we are in a centralization structure. So for that branch manager, he or she cannot approve that 5,000 pesos purchase order without calling the headquarters, no? So dapat i-approve muna sa CEO. So in a centralized organization, the important decisions must remain or remains primarily with the top management. Okay? So now for the decentralization, no? So imagine the branch managers are allowed to make decisions about their own operations. So that is decentralization. And when decision making is pushed even closer to employees and operating personnel, that is empowerment. Okay, so I hope that already have um, you already understand the distinguishment among centralization, decentralization, and empowerment. Now, for the decision levels in the organization, we have here for the centralization structure, the decision power lies from the top management. And for the advantages, again, there is consistency, there is strong control, uniform policies. And now for the disadvantages of a centralized structure, there is slow decision, there is less flexibility, then lower level managers may feel powerless, no? So, walay power ang mga lower level managers in a centralized structure. Now, for the decentralization, the decision power here um, is um, is in the lower level managers. And for the advantages, there is faster decisions, local knowledge, manager development, greater flexibility. But for the disadvantages, there is possible conflicting decisions. So what if uh for the for the department, for the other department, no, naa sila'y decision making or na sila'y gina-develop nga kani, no? Then for the other department na sad sila same kind of gidevelop, no? So what if usara dapat ang magrantan or ma-approvean, no, from the top management. So there is possible conflicting decisions there. Then less uniformity. Then it requires competent managers. So for the flow, again, for the flow, top management to middle management, top management, the decision power, in a centralized organization lies from the top management. For the decentralized, lies from the middle management. And also for the and also supervisory management. For the empowerment, it's the personnel. So the flow here, this is top management to middle management to supervisors to personnel. No, as the decision making moves downward, more authority is delegated. Okay, and as authority is delegated downward, lower level managers and employees can make decisions closer to operations. Kay mas kabisado magud nila ang the things that are happening in their centers, no, or in their segments. So, yes, but I would like to highlight that delegation must be matched with responsibility and accountability. Now, for the big idea here about responsibility accounting, responsibility accounting is a management system that links authority, responsibility, reporting, and performance. Okay, so now let's look into what is authority. So authority means I have the power to make the decision. Now for the responsibility, it means I have the duty to perform the task, no? And for the accountability, it means that I must answer for the results. For the controllability, no, this answers or what are those that can be influenced, no? What can be influenced? So the goal here is not to find someone to blame, but in responsibility accounting, it is to evaluate performance fairly and improve decisions. Okay? Again, for authority, this is the power to make decisions, give orders, or direct action. For the responsibility, this is the duty to perform or not to perform an activity according to the assigned role. For the accountability, the obligation to answer for the consequences of actions or inaction. So authority is equals to responsibility is equals to accountability. And a manager should not be held responsible for outcomes beyond the authority and influence assigned. Now, nganong kaniman? Nganong authority is equals to responsibility is equals to accountability? Does that mean that the terms here are with exact meaning or the same meaning? No? No, it's not. It just means that they should be properly matched and balanced. Okay, so let's explore an example. So Shamil is the production manager. Management tells her, reduce production costs by 100,000. So with this one, no reduction of production costs by 100,000, that is her responsibility. But management also gives her authority to schedule workers, approve overtime, choose among authorized suppliers, control production materials. Now these here, no, the list here is her authority. Now at the end of the month, management asks, did you achieve the 100,000 peso cost reduction? If not, why? That is accountability. Okay? So, authority, you have the power to act. Responsibility, you have the duty to perform. Accountability here is that you must answer for the result. Okay? So, why must they be equal? So, nga naman to? Authority is equals to responsibility is equals to accountability. Because responsibility without authority is unfair, no? Nganong unfair man siya? So imagine telling a manager, you are responsible for reducing the costs, no? But the manager cannot control the purchasing, staffing, the overtime, or production schedules. Okay? So the manager here has the responsibility but lacks authority. So that would be unfair for her. No, that would be unfair for Shamil. Now, for authority without accountability. So imagine giving Shamil the complete authority to spend money and make decisions, but saying you don't have to explain the results. No? No need for you to explain the results. So that is also problematic. No? The organization is problematic there because it's like the manager has authority but no accountability, no? So unsa may control sa company ana, no? So there must be accountability there because that is a function of control. So the balance situation, okay? There must be a balance. There must be a balance situation there. So ideally, we have to give Shamil, the manager, enough authority to fulfill the assigned responsibility. Then we must hold her accountable for the results within that authority. So I hope that's or I hope that it makes sense to you guys, to you working professionals. Now, for the responsibility centers, a responsibility center is an organizational unit whose manager is accountable for specified activities and results. So, for example, let's recall our four managers no, sa atong management science. For example, si Edley. Si Edley is the department chair. So, Edley is responsible for the cost, no? Responsible for the cost of her department. She controls or influences the costs, no? Then first the primary evaluation here is at the cost variance. Okay? Now for the revenue center, controls or influences revenue. So for example, sales manager si Ben Razil. So si Ben Razil must be evaluated with the revenue variance. Then profit center. For example, si Quetzal, no? Si Quetzal, she has a branch, no? She's the manager. So she controls revenues and costs of that particular branch. So the primary evaluation of Quetzal is the controllable or segment margin. Now for the investment center, si ni Nikki, no? So for the investment center, for example, naa siya na siya own na unsa man? Na siya own na company, no? Or related entity. So related entity of a particular company. So that is also an investment center. So she will need to control the revenue, the costs, and the investments. And her primary evaluation will be the ROI, RI, and then the EVA. So ROI is return on investment, RI is residual income, EVA is economic value added. So I want you all to remember the four centers: cost, revenue, profit, and investment. So CRPI. So once an organization delegates authority, there must be a way to measure whether managers are performing well, right? So that is the concept of responsibility centers. Now, think of a responsibility center as a part of the organization with a manager who is responsible for for certain results, no? So the manager's evaluation should match the scope of authority. Okay? Again, without authority, no, we cannot impose the responsibility, right? So notice what happens from cost from as we move from left to right, from cost to investment, no? A cost center has the narrowest responsibility. Gamay ra kayong iyang scope sa iyang responsibility. A revenue center controls revenue. A profit center controls both revenue and costs. An investment center has the broadest responsibility because the manager also makes decisions involving investments and assets. Okay? So, narrowest to broadest. Now, let's go to the organizational structure. So look at the flow of the organizational structure. At the top here is the CEO. Below the CEO are the division presidents, no? Division presidents, and then the vice presidents, no? So for the product or functional responsibility, then the department managers, then the supervisors, and then the production personnels. So each level here has different degree of authority and responsibility. Therefore, the performance evaluation must also be appropriate to the level of responsibility. So the principle here is that the higher the managerial level, the broader the authority and responsibility. So pinaka-broadest ni siya, no? Og authority and responsibility. Therefore, performance measures should also be appropriate to the manager's level. Okay? So a higher level manager usually receives the summarized information from the lower level centers. Okay. So organizations do not all use the same structure, right? So there may be instance that a company may organize around functions. So that's what you call functional. Um, functional. And then its example is finance, production, sales, HR, marketing. No? This is best when functional expertise is the strategic emphasis. So it just means that managers are grouped according to their functional expertise. So, 9 managers of finance, production, sales, HR, and marketing. Now, another company may organize around products. For example, product 1, 2, or 3. No? Our products here, or it just means that our products are strategically important. So, we're going to organize responsibility around our product lines. So this is useful when products have different customers, costs, strategies, or markets. And another may organize around geographical areas. For example, North, Central, South, or Cebu, Manila, and Davao. So this structure makes sense when geographical markets have different characteristics. So for example, a company operating throughout the Philippines might have different regional managers because ano man, no, kay every region has different customer behavior, logistics, competition, and operating conditions. Okay? So the important point here is that organizational strategy determines an organizational structure. It can either be functional, by product, or by geography, rather. So the golden rule here in responsibility accounting is controllability. This is the most important principle in this chapter, in chapter 8, responsibility accounting. So a manager should not be punished for something that he or she has no power to control. So we have to evaluate managers based on what they can control or influence. So controllability here just means that managers power to decide or influence whether an item, event, or activity occurs. Controllable items include department supplies, scheduling, overtime decisions. Now, for the potentially non-controllable items, these are corporate rent allocation, CEO salary, centrally imposed charges. So those are examples and many more. Now, let's have here an example. Alexa is a production manager too. You or she can control direct labor scheduling, production efficiency, some production supplies. But can she control rent, corporate rent? Can she control CEO salary? Can she control depreciation of a building purchased by the headquarters? No? Probably not. So therefore, these costs should be distinguished from the cost she can actually control, which are these. Now, quick check. Who is responsible? Electricity expense increased by 30% because the utility company raised its rates. A. Production supervisor. B. Department manager. C. CEO. D. Nobody directly responsible for the rate increase. Okay, so we also have to look into additional facts or information that would be needed before evaluating the manager. No? So did the manager control electricity usage? Was the increase caused by higher rates? Was production volume higher? Was the increase caused by a company-wide rate adjustment? No? So in this case, In this case, the correct answer is letter D. Nobody is directly responsible for the rate increase, assuming that the rate increase is outside the management's control. Now, for the performance evaluation, performance is equals to objectives plus standards plus responsibility plus controllability. Okay, so there is an important mistake in management accounting, no? So the assumption here is that everyone should be evaluated using the same performance measure, but that's not appropriate, no? Because a cost center manager cannot be evaluated using ROI, no? Return on investment. Nga naman, kay si manager doesn't control investments, no? Also, si investment manager should not be evaluated solely on whether costs were below budget because his or her decisions involves revenues, costs, and investments. So different responsibility center managers should be evaluated differently. And reports should distinguish controllable from non-controllable items. Performance evaluation is a control process. That's why we have to measure, we have to compare, we have to explain, and improve. And if ever there's a variance, there must be an investigation. Okay? So it doesn't mean that if we have favorable variance, it's already good, it's already performing well. No, we have to investigate further. And of course, for the unfavorable ones. No? So fair evaluation requires the right measure for the right manager. Now let's look into the responsibility accounting reports. These must be timely, relevant, verifiable, controllable. For the timely, information must arrive when managers can still act on it. No? So dapat timely siya, relevant, focus on information that supports the manager's decision. It must be relevant, it must be useful, no? Verifiable, sorry. Numbers should be supported and reliable. Controllable. There must be controllability. So separate what the manager can and cannot control. So reports become more summarized as they move upward through the organization. Okay? So for example, the personnel, no? The personnel prepares a report, the supervisor reviews it, no? Then the department manager reviews it as well. The vice president receives an even more summarized report. Then the CEO is the last one, no? The last one to receive the report, the summarized information. So here, the CEO doesn't need to see every 1,000 variants in every department. Okay? So let's have an example of a responsibility center, the cost center. Cost center manager is primarily responsible to control or influence the incurrence of costs. So, cost variance ang tanawon sa iyahang or he or she is evaluated with a cost variance report, actual cost less budgeted cost or actual cost versus budgeted cost. So if the actual is lesser than the budgeted cost, no? So that is favorable, right? So that means there is a lower spending than what was budgeted. But if the actual is greater than the budget, no? What does that mean? It's unfavorable because there is a higher spending there than what was planned. So the main evaluation technique here is the cost variance analysis. But it doesn't necessarily mean that if favorable variance siya kay good na siya, no? It is still up for investigation. Now let's have an example here. Gab is the department manager with the total controllable costs below. The budget is 3,749 million. Actual is 3.72 million. The variance is 29,000. it's favorable. Kay dako man ang budget kaysa sa actual, no? So 29,000 favorable. So a favorable variance again is not the end of the story, no? So it is a signal for investigation and not automatically a proof of performance. So actual materials here or actual material cost is below the budget, right? But we also have to look into other areas, like did the production also fall below target? Were there fewer units produced? Was cheaper material purchased? And did quality suffer? Was the budget realistic? Is the variance temporary or recurring? No? So we need to consider the activity levels and other relevant information. Now, for the revenue center manager. So the primary responsibility of the revenue center manager, let's have Chris here as the revenue center manager. He is to generate revenue, and he is not responsible for the associated operating costs. So he is being evaluated with a revenue variance report. Okay, so if the actual revenue is greater than the budgeted, then that is a favorable. There is a favorable variance there. But if the actual revenue is lesser than the budgeted, there is an unfavorable revenue variance. So for example, Chris has budgeted the sales as 5 million, but the actual sales is actually 5.4 million. So there is a 400,000 favorable variance. No? So this automatically mean that Chris performed excellently, no? Not necessarily. So again, we have to look into other information, no? So quantitative man siya nga information. We also have to look into qualitative information. So were sales generated through excessive discounts? Was the sales volume profitable? Was the target realistic, no? Were there unusual market conditions? So we have to look into those areas as well, or factors. Then for the profit center manager, so he or she is responsible for both revenue and costs. So for the revenue here, the sales, the pricing, the volume, the sales mix. For the cost, the variable cost, the controllable fixed costs, and operating decisions. For the performance, controllable margin is controllable margin and the segment margin. So depends, no? So profit center managers have a broader responsibility, right? Because they are evaluated both of revenues and costs. So their evaluation, no, is is through a segment um analysis, no, or segment report. So now let's look at the composition of segment margin. So segment margin is calculated. Let's look into the items here or line items. Contribution margin, less controllable direct fixed costs or controllable costs. That is controllable margin. Less non-controllable direct fixed costs or non-controllable costs. So that is the segment margin. So controllable margin here is useful for evaluating the manager. But the segment margin is useful for evaluating the segment's economic contribution. So controllable margin here is, or we have a question, no? How well did the manager control the items within the manager's influence? And this is useful for the manager evaluation. For the segment margin questions, how much does the segment contribute after its direct fixed costs? It's useful for segment evaluation. So do not confuse the performance of the manager with the performance of the segment. So ari ra gyud siya. He or she will be he or she will be evaluated using the controllable margin, not the segment margin. So for a sample problem about segment performance, Chua Corporation has reported losses for 6 consecutive quarters. So this is the data. The sales is 6.3 million. Variable cost is 3.474 million. Contribution margin is 2.8 million. So that is just sales less variable cost. That is your contribution margin. Then you have here fixed cost, 3.3 million. So 2.8 minus 3.3, we have a loss of 500,000. So let's examine. No, if ever there are product lines, let's examine which product line has caused the problem. Okay? So dili ta mag-decide dayon, no? So we need segment information. We need segment information, not just total company profit. Okay? So let's explore here the different product lines, product A, product B, and product C. So the sales, as you can see, which of the product lines here has the highest sales? We can say that product C, right? Now, which has the highest segment margin? So the highest segment margin is product B. Now, which product is reducing the total company profitability? So we can say that product C has the it's not having a segment margin, right? It has a segment loss of 520,000. So we can see here that it's very important for us to have a segment evaluation, no? Because if we look at only sales, we can say that product C is fantastic, right? It generates 3 million. But sales alone do not tell us whether a segment is good, no? Product C generates a negative segment margin of 520,000. In other words, it is actually reducing the company's overall profitability. So, keep or drop. So, we have to drop product line C. So, again, highest sales is not tantamount to the best segment. Okay? So, the lesson here is that sales alone do not tell us whether a segment is profitable. We need to analyze costs and segment margin. So, if we have a decision making, keep or drop a particular segment, we have to look into the segment margin. Okay? Segment margin. So the segment margin here is calculated as sales less variable costs. We derive at contribution margin less controllable fixed costs is equals to controllable margin less non-controllable direct fixed costs. So non-controllable costs here are included. So here we have product A. The controllable margin is 308,000. For product B, 338,000. For product C, 280,000. So the highest in terms of controllable margin is product B, right? Has the highest peso segment margin. Well, for the sales, 1.2 million for A, 2.1 million for B, 3 million for C. So it has the highest sales, product C. But it has a negative segment margin. Okay, for the controllable margin percentage, no? Controllable margin ratio. So the product A has 25.7%, product B has 16.1%, 9.3% for product C. So the highest controllable margin ratio here is product A. So there are different measures, no? And it can produce different rankings. So we have to know what question each measure answers. So the ratio here is just an additional analytical comparison, but it is not the only basis for a decision. So I would like to remind you that we don't, or we never have to evaluate a manager using numbers the manager cannot control, no? We have to evaluate them using the controllable costs, no? Or what they can control. And also we must never evaluate a segment using only one financial measure. We have to look into other measures as well. So as future managers, um, I would like to remind you that you will be given authority over people, money, resources, and decisions. But you have to remember that authority is not simply a privilege, it is a trust. How you handle the small responsibilities given to you today will prepare you for the greater responsibilities you will carry tomorrow. So, for our attendance today, I would like you to comment in the YouTube, no? So I will be giving you the link of this pre-recorded lecture, and I want you to comment there your insights for the things that we have discussed today. Okay? So you can be very specific, um you can have examples, no? So again, I would like to ask for your insights, no? And you have to comment it in our YouTube video that I will be sending a link to you in our class. Okay? Class GC specifically. So thank you for today, everyone, and see you in our next discussion about divisional performance measures. So we will also tackle there the investment center. Bye-bye, everyone.